Welcome back to B&H's industry interview series for NAB On Demand, where we interview creatives in the film and television industry. Today, we're talking to a man of many mediums, photographer, filmmaker, musician, writer, producer, the man of the hour, Jesse Korman. Jesse's career started in 2011 shooting movie posters and production stills for Yale Productions. In 2018, Jesse was the campaign photographer that helped launch Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez into Congress. He's now gone on to become a feature film producer at Yale Productions, recently wrapping a new film starring John Malkovich, Michael Jai White, and Tyrese Gibson entitled Red 48. Jesse, thanks so much for taking the time to meet with us this morning.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure's all mine.
Now, before we jump into the meat and potatoes of producing, we want to get to know you a little bit better. Your background isn't necessarily in film. How did you get your start in the industry?
You're right. It is definitely not in film. I never really had any aspirations to being a sort of ending into this sort of world with filmmaking and stuff like that. I just loved movies and I just loved the craft of it. But it really did start off from, I mean, if we rewind back to my singer days. So I sing for a band called Number 12 Looks Like You. It's a heavy metal band. You don't have to look it up. It's fine. But I got to that. I started that when I was 16, and that whole world of this heavy metal world, when you're creating the music, you have to create, I was creating all the assets. So whether it was designs or video content, stuff like that, I had to sort of jump like headfirst into the water of learning how to do all of this stuff. So it did sort of start at that time where I was creating content, found the love for storytelling with music and plus visual. I connected the two. So as I kept going with Number 12, everything just became a trickle effect because I started off toured for about 10 years, did about 6 albums. I started managing bands like Foxy Shazam, Bad Raps, and these guys were doing really well. Worked for a management company in New York, Crush Management. And then that whole thing led to getting a random email from a very well-known photographer, Joe Yell, who was a huge fan of the band I was managing, Foxy. He's like, we should do a photo shoot together. I was like, who is this guy? And then I looked at his work. I'm like, oh my God. And if you don't know him, you should look him up. But that turned into me being his digital tech. And I had never even heard of that phrase before. So then all of a sudden, after I stopped doing my band and I jumped into the photography world, I was traveling around the world again, but not in a band, as a digital tech. So me and Joey just around the clock started working on every shoot, everything. My first photo shoot was Project Runway, and I had just learned what a digital tech was maybe 48 hours beforehand. I'm telling that secret here. It's fine. So we jumped into that. One thing led to another, to where I finally started learning about photography. And I sort of went backwards in that sense, where I was learning what a great photo really was, what the grading was, how to capture the right composition, lighting, everything. And at that point, I still wasn't even knowing how to use a camera manually. So I started learning all that, and my eye was already trained so much from all of Joey's knowledge. And then it turned into meeting a producer, Jordan Levine, and that turned into, hey, like, we should work on something together. But for the time being, I can't really afford you, but why don't I hire you to be my set photographer? I'll give you a little bit of money. 17 movies later, here we are, and I'm the creative producer for Yale Productions. And it sort of had such a everything really did lead into one another. And I really did have to do everything that I did to get to this point. And it went from being the on-set photographer, where I'm on set for 12 hours a day, watching how the whole set's running, what everybody's doing. And then I saw the efficiency of sets. And then that turned into maybe 5 movies in, like, guys, I noticed this one guy is sort of a bit slow here. If we changed it to this, and I was giving sort of pointers here and there with efficiency, then they were like, hey, you should be the on-set producer. Then it turned into creative producer. So just because my experience on set from set photography, I had so much knowledge of how to run sets and learning from directors, other cinematographers. I took all the knowledge of all the best people who are doing the best things, combined into my own sort of brain of what the best things are, and then relate it to my team, being like, hey guys, we're going to this next movie. I think we could become a bit more efficient with this XYZ. I can, have some chats with the actors to come onto other movies. So yeah, so that is sort of how I got to my producer role here.
And producing can be a very left-brained type of analytic role. Coming from a background of a right-brained creative, how did you adapt, and were there any challenges along the way?
Um, so it is. You're right. It is. And for me personally, I'm I'm not a very I'm not a very book smart kind of person. I mean, I dropped out of high school, and I was just not very good at working specific parts of like logistics, number crunching, stuff like that. I was always creative. That's just everything that since I can remember, that's all I like went towards. But then there is, once you sort of get to a certain point of seeing a film set fully in motion, and you're thinking about the story when they're capturing everything, and you're thinking about, okay, they're going to edit this, you start thinking about the number side of things, like, oh man, we didn't finish our day, we have to go over another day, man, that extra day is going to cost $50,000. Oh my God, that $50,000 is private equity that we have. And so like it starts like really molding together. And then where you might be like, I'm not really that sort of person to talk about numbers and investments, stuff like that. You really start seeing exactly where it all goes on the creative side, and actually becomes quite fun, because then you're starting to think about, you read scripts and you're thinking about, oh, there's going to be a fire gag where someone's going to get lit on fire. And you're just like, oh, right, we only have $2 million for this, but we have a car crash here. We have to light this person on fire. We have to get a whole fire team, stunts team, special effects team, then post. We have to add extra special effects. And all of that starts combining into like, cool, we can change the fire gag to just them falling dead, and it tells the same story. So it's very important to like have that sort of producer side of things when you're talking creative, because it pushes you into a new side of like, well, let me get a bit more creative, how I can do this a bit more inexpensive.
And were there any mistakes, any specific mistakes that you made early on that ultimately led to your success that maybe some of our younger viewers could learn from?
um I think when I'm sort of training these new photographers as well on set to be set photographers, so I still shoot all the gallery images for all the movie posters, and I'll occasionally do some set photography if it's a movie that, or some actors or scenes that I really love, like a movie we did called Chick Fight earlier this year with Alec Baldwin, Bella Thorne, Malin Ackerman. It was a female sort of bridesmaids meets Fight Club comedy. It's not out yet, but the scene of the Fight Club was so awesome, and we had a set photographer, but I was like, I got to shoot this. So that made me really excited. So when I'm telling people, like when I'm working with some of these new people or people who are just coming onto set, I can give them all the pointers and all the hot things to focus on, stuff like that. But I feel like sometimes I don't want to tell them that, because I only got to where I was by all the mistakes on set, and getting yelled at on set by the first AD, being like, Jesse, get out of the room. You're not supposed to be in here. It's a closed set. And I was like, oh, I gotta get out. And just learning a lot of the mistakes of set etiquette. And I think that is so important for people to learn on their own, because if you are sort of guided, it is great guidelines, but you truly get it like scarred into your brain when something bad happens, and you just never want to be that person who just gets embarrassed in front of a whole crew, and you're like, oh God, I just walked into the set, like what am I doing? And you'll never forget that moment, and it will be something you'll never it will never happen again.
Now, tell us a little bit about the synopsis of your new movie, Red 48.
So the synopsis is, to in a very general broad stroke, is a person who has some PTSD of some war that he was when he was a Marine, and he's happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, um, and it's basically a Die Hard movie, but taken inside of like a Target slash Walmart store. So that he happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The bad guys, the terrorists, they sort of hold this place hostage, And the person who owns the place is John Malkovich's store, Sam Nelson. And so he's giving a big speech for his he's a presidential candidate, and he's giving his speech to be reelected. So these sort of terrorists are planning the attack around that, and they're getting revenge on their father who felt like he was wronged. And the Sam Nelson, who's John Malkovich, and his former partner, they were former business partners that went sort of completely they had a bad relationship. So the kids are getting revenge on Sam Nelson. So, but we're having it the whole perspective from Tyrese Gibson's perspective. He's sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he has to save the day. So yeah, it's a really fun action, very fast paced, action thriller.
Now, every movie starts with a screenplay that gets reviewed and ultimately greenlit by the studio. What is that first production meeting like? Where do you start?
So unlike a lot of studio films, we're not funded. Yale Productions is a completely independent production company. So all of our money comes from private equity and stuff like that. So we don't get any funding from a big studio. So the great thing about that is that we can retain all creative control, which doesn't happen often. It's a lot of studios, say Lionsgate or whatever, they fund all this, but because they know they can pull the plug at any time on whoever is on the creative side to make it their own. So we have that huge upper hand where we can chat with filmmakers, directors, script writers, and be like, yeah, and they're like, is this okay? Is that okay? I mean, we're doing that right now too, on some pretty big projects, and they just find it so great that they can have that creative control and not have to worry about like, is this, are you going to take this from me? It's like, no, this is all yours. So those production meetings usually go with like us telling the filmmakers where we stand with everything, and to let them know that we're always going to have their backs. If it's something that we can get behind, if it makes sense on paper, if it makes sense with the actors, if the genre makes sense, they're going to have our blessing, and that they'll be able to rock the full straight through.
And producing a film often takes a team of producers to accomplish. How did you split responsibilities between producers on the Red 48 production?
So we just all, we all did wear many hats. So this one in particular it was a bit of a like curveball, this last movie, because of the COVID situation. So our chick fight movie that went in Puerto Rico in January was much different than the one that we had for Red 48. Producer wise, we basically all have our own strengths. So whether it's Jordan Levine, Jordan Beckerman, who are the partners of the company, Jordan Beckerman was our attorney at one point, who's now a full partner, and entertainment attorney. And then Jordan Levine was the founder who sort of started all this, Jordan Yale Levine. And so both of them sort of will cover the whole aspect of bringing in the project, getting it all funded, casting it, I mean, everything. And then it sort of trickles off to different people like me. So I'll help build I can build lookbooks to get different, so we can get different equity in. I help out with, this one I helped out with, I was the locations manager. So like something I don't think I ever wanted to do again, because it is very hard, because I live in Jersey. So I was going out with my assistant Jeff, and we were running around looking for a needle in a haystack of a store that we can take over. Then you have other people who are doing the casting and raising some funds. Then you have other people who are coordinating all the production and line producing. So we all do have our own strengths, but this one in particular, because the COVID situation sort of knocked down the budget significantly, because I think a lot of investors were just a bit worried with it, just wondering if it was going to get shut down. We were the first and only film production that got up and running in New Jersey. So I think people were a bit hesitant, but we followed all the protocols of the COVID compliance. Everything was met, and it was a huge expense, just even getting nasal swab 3 times a week and wearing the mask on set all day for 12 hours. We all had to sort of know that we had to bring the budget significantly down to make this movie happen. So we did do individually, we wore a million hats. So yeah, It usually is a bit more specific to what we do, like on a movie Chick Fight. I'll head down to Puerto Rico. I'll be the on-set producer. Any questions or anything, I'm there for it. But this one, I was like locations, and I was helping with wardrobe and helping out with PA and helping out with on-set producing, and I was set photographer and I was behind the scenes filming. It was like kind of all over the place.
Yeah, kind of a more of a skeleton crew nowadays. What was this crew like, maybe in numbers, compared to other crews?
This crew was incredibly stripped down. It was, I wouldn't say it was like a complete skeleton crew where it was like a $500,000 budget. We still had a couple million to work with, but the crew was quite bare. I would say around there was about 60 to 70 people, which is still a lot. Don't get me wrong, it is a lot, but for our other movies, it is a lot more. So we had to just, and since we had to follow a lot of the protocol for the SAT for the requirements of COVID, there was no one was allowed to be on set who didn't have to be there. So if it was like investors who wanted to come by, or if it was other producers that like they weren't allowed. It was people who were only allowed to be on set are the only people allowed. So even if it was Jordan Levine and Jordan Beckerman who wanted to come, they really weren't allowed to because they didn't necessarily have to be there. Of course, like the movie wouldn't have been made without them. But that was very interesting to see. Like, man, like they can't even come by if they want to because the rules are so strict. So this crew was like bare bones. Like, I mean, it was bare bones. Everything was like you just had we had two cameras running. So we had two camera ops. We had their teams. We had one wardrobe person. We had one hair, one makeup. Like, it was just bare bones, which is, whew, it was stressful, like very stressful.
And obviously the below the line crew is affected. Was it also bare bones above the line crew? Did you have to miss out on any roles, above the line roles that you normally would have during a production?
I mean, I don't know if we necessarily missed out on anything because we really did truly make it work for everything across the board. Where things, yeah, of course, it would have been nice to have. For example, I think we did for the first time. We did like we did a lot of sort of run and gun look for the cinematography. There wasn't like big lighting setups at all, so it was available light almost like we lit the set and then it was just basically available light from there. We lit minimally, so like we really scaled it down, so we made it work for all of our budget purposes. And I wouldn't say we missed out on anything, because when all that matters is what's on screen, and what we saw on screen once it's all put together, it looks huge. Like, it looks so much bigger than what we actually shot it for.
And how did the pandemic change your production insurance, if at all?
Well, I mean, no one really wanted to insure any production companies. There was such a small amount of studios and production companies who actually got their way into that clause of like being insured for COVID stuff. But for us, we were just able to, we presented everything of all the, even, the SAG requirements of the COVID compliance, and having a compliance officer on set from front to back, being tested with a temperature check right at the beginning. You have to fill out a questionnaire every single night before you come to set. You're tested nasal swab 3 times a week. I mean, it was, we had the compliance officer who kept everybody apart, 6 feet apart, made sure everybody was good. So like, we showed all of these to the actors, crew, everyone, to make them feel comfortable and to let them know, like, look, we know this is a scary time, but we all want to work just as much as you. We're all gonna live in this bubble together, and we're gonna make this happen. And here's our safety rules. So we were very careful on that side of things.
And was location scouting approached differently with COVID regulations put into place? Were there any issues with any planned interiors in a confined space?
Oh yeah, very, very much. I mean, take for example, if I go to you, I'm like, hey man, can I film this? It's only a half-day scene, but I'm gonna just film like a little dialogue scene here. Sure, that sounds about fine. 2 people just having dialogue, but then you think about all these new people who you don't know who are coming to your house that is the house that you live in, and we don't have enough money to build a set and have like a living room set. It's like it is friends residential. And so when we were going out looking for these spots, we had gotten turned down a few times because it's just like, I don't really know how comfortable I feel with all these new people coming into my place. And sure, I'm sure you guys are tested, but if there is that off chance that someone is not feeling good and they're in my house and I have to live there that night, I'm just not sure. And I don't really care about the money either. It's just I don't feel safe. So that we had to keep that like very much in the foreground of when we're looking for these places. So I would have to preface it with like, hey, just so you know, we are being very careful. Let me show you our rules and regulations. We're going to clean everything, sanitize everything before and after. Like we're good. So it was very new when looking for locations. Absolutely.
And how did you approach casting calls? Were auditions held remotely? What does that do to the relationship between the director and the talent?
Yeah, everything was remote. It was basically this. It was Zoom, and think about the idea of even being in New Jersey and having to go to New York, for example, to commute. Just that alone, then having to be in the same room, it just doesn't exist right now. Like I'm sure it does somewhere, but it's such a it is when you think about it, it's like it was such a privilege to be able to be face to face and see something so like in your presence, feel the energy. We're just at a different time now. We all, for us in Yale, we all produce from all over the country, from me in Jersey, Jordan, Long Island, Colorado, San Francisco, Florida, Ohio. We're all over the place, and we don't work in an office. So we're used to working remotely just like this for all of our movies. But when we're doing this casting stuff, we're realizing how much we have to just heavily rely on self tapes and like Zoom calls for it to happen.
And where do you find most of the productions in the US these days?
So I thought, or just not me, a lot of people think it's a lot in California. Don't get me wrong, there's still the studios are still in California. There's LA, the big studios are there. But man, with the Brooklyn, with all their studios there, and the new tax credit in New Jersey for the last few years, there's a lot. There's so much more, in my opinion. I think there's so much more happening here on the East Coast, upstate New York, and the Kingston, the Hudson Valley area. It's kind of like mini Hollywood up there. It's constant how much they're filming up there. It's insane. But now their tax program up there isn't as good as New Jersey. So here we are, up and running, fully successful, working back and forth with the New Jersey Film Commission, and they're so excited. We're so super happy. So every movie we have slated coming up now is minus one movie, is all in New Jersey, and the tax break is great. You can go into middle Jersey where it looks like you're in the middle and the Midwest America, farmland. Then you have another part of Jersey where it can look really like a lot of hills, so you can be like in the Pacific Northwest. And then you have the more city like area like Newark, where some shots of Joker were filmed over there. That can film quite dated. So we kind of have so much here. And for me, being pro Jersey, I mean, I've got NJ tattooed on my knuckles there. I was born in Newark, grew up in Jersey City, lived in Bergen County, and like to be able to come back to the place that I grew up with these multi-million-dollar movies, it is so awesome. It's not even just like, oh, I guess we'll make it happen in Jersey. It's like, no, this is like ideal to film in New Jersey. This is great, actually. And I can pull all my favors, all my friends who are so talented to want to come and work in the movie industry. I can finally make those calls. So I'm just happy that we're at that point that movies are really happening, and it makes a lot of sense here.
That's promising to hear.
Yeah.
So let's get back to production on Red 48. What did a normal day on set look like for you? What were some of your roles specifically?
So a normal day on set is I'll show up, get my temperature checked as soon as you get there. The compliance officer has to check if you filled out the questionnaire. She makes sure it's all good. You get a wristband. So these wristbands I think are going to start being a new thing for even indie movies. because it shows the people who have been cleared. So their test came back negative. They filled out the questionnaire. Cool, you can get a bracelet, and then it gives you different layers, different colors bracelets. So a certain color will get you in set, and you're allowed to be in somewhat close proximity. Others, like certain PAs where they have to just stay all outside, don't have a different color because it's too much people inside. So the amount of number, the number of people inside set is already accounted for before the day even starts. So we're already following the rules on that sense. Then craft services is also very interesting. It's all, there's no more buffet style. It's all individually packed lunches or breakfast. You also can't go up and get your own coffee. So there's someone designated who wear their gloves, who are the only people allowed to touch anything there. So you go up and you just got to wait in line, get all your stuff. And for me, I love just running there, get my buffet style eggs and just going and do my, but you gotta, there's all that stuff now. Then we have a safety meeting every single morning where we just go over all the rules again, just in case anyone might have forgotten or just needs a refreshment. Then we start the day, and then, you know, the day starts going, and we, so with actors too, when you're around them, they also want to feel the safety of people around them. So we give them as much space as possible. We all stay out of the area as possible, especially when they're on camera. They have to take their masks off. So we try to limit the amount of people on set as much as possible. And then when we cut, they'll put their mask back on. If they're wandering around, they have their masks on. But when they're on screen, anything like that, their masks are off. And that's definitely changed significant. That's a very obviously strange new thing. We also have a sanitation person who their only job is to just walk around set to sanitize any things that might have been held, any doorknobs, bathrooms, anything. So we have that. And then lunch happens. We have and so for me on set, I'll sort of just still do, so this movie, again, like I wore so many hats. So I was a set photographer. I was also doing some behind the scenes video with somebody else. So I'm shooting the photos, and then I'm going to monitor, making sure that everything's still looking good as well, making sure that the director's happy, producers back offset are happy. Like, hey, how's everyone looking? How are they looking on camera? Like, what are we shooting today? Relaying messages back and forth, running back on set, shooting some more stills, sending my Wi-Fi images to my phone so I can color grade to send back to everyone. Like, hey, this is what we're looking at, because they all want to see what's happening. So they're like, oh my God, it's amazing. Then we're sending them to our possible buyers and distributors and investors. So everyone's saying, oh, this is great. This is looking really cool. Running back on set and then making sure everything is going there. Then we'll break for lunch. We have a staggered lunch. So because, you know, you can't really congregate like you used to. So it's all these tables where you would have your lunch style tables. You sit at one end, it's like the Batman table. You sit at one end and the other end, and it's 6 feet apart. So that's the only way you're allowed to eat 2 people at a table, and the tables are just all lined up everywhere. You go up to the thing, individually boxed lunches. So you tell them what you want the night before. You have 2 options, a vegan or just regular. And then you go up, you get your meal, sit down. Then back on set, same thing, craft services, you can't touch anything. So if you want any snacks, can't touch anything. You can look, you got to point and say that one, I want that one. It's crazy, but you sort of that. And then the day sort of wraps, and everything is cleaned again, and we're reset for the next day.
Definitely a little bit different than I'm sure what you're used to.
A little different.
Is there any positive things that you kind of took away from this new normal on set? Maybe a silver lining?
Definitely silver lining. One big one for sure is if you ever felt like, if you've been on set and you know what it's like being on set for multiple weeks, you know the realness of getting sick. I mean, it's constant being fatigued, you're around germs. It could be cold out, so you're getting a bit cold, sinus, everything. One thing is for sure, the mass and the amount of cleanliness, you do feel like you feel very protected. That is absolutely the silver lining that we all spoke about, is nobody got sick. Like, and it's crazy to think about, because almost every movie, when you think about it, someone's like, oh, I don't feel too good, like I'm a bit like nasally, I've got a little bit of a cough. This movie, health was 100% straight through. It was insane. There's no spreading of germs. You can't like high five, like you're just sort of like hello, and you got the mask. And the silver lining is that even just a small cold can go just get to everybody so fast on a normal set. That's the best thing that I've realized. And also the craft services and the lunches, there is something about that with everything being individually boxed and so only one person touching it. Like someone picks up a candy bar and maybe they've got a cold and they're like, I don't really want Three Musketeers, and they'll toss it back and they'll be like, I don't want this. Or like someone dipping their hand in an M&M's jar and it's just nasty. Like there's stuff that all of that being able to feel safe and secure with that is the top. That's the best thing that I've seen, is like everybody's safety and health is really great. And I think it's also put us to the test to show that we can make such a huge, like such a big budget looking movie happen at such a smaller scale. So now we can sort of, okay, cool, we did this during the craziest time of our lives in film. Now we know where that was. Now we can sort of scale up and we can implement a little bit more and still get that huge production value, but just throw in a little bit more and see where we can go with that. So it's really put us to the test to see how far we can go.
Now, a normal film production might take 2 to 3 months to shoot. With all these kind of COVID regulations put into place, did that extend your production schedule? Tell us a little bit about what your schedule looked like.
So people don't really believe me when I tell them that when we're in production, we shoot about 15 to 23 days always. I don't think I've ever went over a 23-day mark. So this movie, it's a full feature. We shot it in 15 days. It was 5-day work weeks, weekends off, 3 weeks. Shot it with 2 cameras. There's no crazy camera rigs. There was no steady cam. There was no cranes. Everything was all handheld. There was no dollies. There was no tracks, nothing. And we typically, our average, we shoot movies on average about 18 to 20 days. So that's every movie we've ever done is 18 to 20 days. And no one ever believes that we shot a movie that fast, but like we get, as fast as we shoot it, we get them up and running even faster, because we just have this formula that we know how to be incredibly efficient and how to only take scripts that we can shoot in those times. We won't take movies that will be, it's like, oh man, there's this huge explosion and there's this huge fight and there's this army of people. We just won't take movies like that because we know it's going to be 25 days, 30 days. It has to financially make sense for us to fit into our bracket of movies. And if it fits in that 15 to 23 day bracket, where it's all a go, it all makes sense.
I mean, that's incredible efficiency, even outside of, pandemic regulations. What about Yale Productions specifically contributes to that efficiency in film production?
I think it's just because not saying this is all we do, obviously it's our jobs, but like, it really is, for me, it's my 17th or coming up on my 18th movie. It really is just being able to pick out all the best people in their departments, all the best department heads, and finding the people that we just gel with so fast, and being able to it's like a light switch. Everything, the minute we get a script, it's a lot of development, a lot of like formulating, but the minute an actor says yes and it's a go, the switch just turns on, and then everything is just go, go, go. And everyone just knows their roles of where we have to, like, everyone knows their marching orders. No one's like, I wonder if I should like do this, or, oh, should we hire that? Like, we already know. So it's just it's literally just like a photo shoot. It's like, if you have your same team on a photo shoot, you have your first assistant, second assistant, and your lighting package that you already know. It's like, that's a much more scaled down version. You just know the switch just turns on and it's just boom, you know everything of how everything works. And that's how we are. We have every department head who we already know, who we've already vetted, who we've worked with before. The light turns on and we just move. So it would be much different if we were shooting in different states with different crews all the time. So if we have to we did a movie in Dallas, it was a bit different for us because we never did a movie there. So it took a little bit of oiling up and just being like, okay, cool. Like we're little hiccups here and there. We did a movie in Chicago, same little thing, but we still meet our marks every single time. But now that we're in Jersey, we're hoping to build an even more solid foundation here, the same crew, where we just, all right, cool, same crew, new director, new cinematographer, new story, and then new actors, boom. And we're just gonna keep going with that. And we did that a lot in upstate New York. We did about a dozen movies in the Hudson Valley, and we worked with the same people all the time. So everyone just knew, like, boom, boom, marching orders, go. And 15 days later, we got a movie in the can.
That's insane. How many pages were you shooting per day?
There was one day where we shot 11 and a half pages, which was insane. I mean, that's also has to do with our director and the prep that he did, John Keys. Right. But on average, we'll shoot about 4 to 6 pages a day. And then some days we'll have to really push it to like possibly 10 pages. But, you know, again, we know all of this before we even start production. We'll read the script and we'll know pretty immediately if it fits within our mold of things that we can make happen. So our movies coming up, there's some very, very exciting movies coming up. Our biggest yet, I can't even talk about because it's still so in development, but one of them is also going to be my first feature that I'm directing, which is
amazing.
So I got this crazy opportunity. The script is amazing. It's a psychological thriller right up my alley, very dark and twisted. And it will be my first feature debut. I do music videos, but this will be my first feature. So that, alongside some our highest, biggest actors we've worked with yet, still to come for like the next like 6 months, basically.
So now directing is a little bit more in your creative wheelhouse. What excites you about directing versus producing?
I mean, to be honest, I think they sort of go hand in hand. Creative producing is sort of, in a way, like obviously not exactly directing, but you can't be, in my opinion, I feel like you can't really just be a director without being a creative producer. Like you really do have to get into the nitty gritty to understand the script and go comb through the script to be like, cool, people are going to be jumping off of a house. Like we can't really afford to have wire work and green screens like on this budget. So how can we get creative? And I feel like you have to know that as a director creatively to know what you want to go for, to go backwards and know how to work that into the budget. So I love both of it. The directing part is just cool because I feel like after all these movies, I've seen some top-notch directors. I've seen some directors who have not been so great. And I feel like I've truly formulated this sort of art in my head of like the best things to take from all the best guys and the things to make sure I do not do. So I feel beyond repaired. I have great relationships with all the actors we've worked with, because I'm the guy who's on set as one of the producers, and I've built a lot of relationships that I'm going to be pulling favors and calling like, hey, like I'm directing my first movie, you want to come on board? So pulling a lot of those favors, but also I'm on the gear side of things. Like I was a set photographer, and I still do commercial shooting. So all of my friends in those departments, the camera departments and lighting departments and costume departments, like I feel like I have their respect as well, because they see me as just the crew guy who was there, and now I'm here. And so I'm like, guys, like I'm all you talented guys, like you're on my team now, like come, like I want to bring you on and I can understand and talk their language. So it's very exciting for me.
That is really exciting. That's always a big first step. So you've completed production. It's in the can. Where does your job end as a co-producer?
My job will end. My job will end when the final cut is done. The edit, the color grade, literally it's ready to be delivered. Because at this point, I'm still also helping out with even the music composing. So I brought in one of my old friends. So like I told you before, one of the great things about being in this position and also in Jersey, I was able to bring some of my heavy metal friends into this world. So a band I used to tour with, this band called the Dillinger Escape Plan. My buddy Ben Wyman, he is now the composer for the movie. I always knew he was beyond capable, But being in this position, I was finally able to be like, Ben, like crush it on this. This is your opportunity. Like you got like kill it on this. So this to the director, he loved it. Everybody loved it. So I'm sort of in that world with them, going over some of the music for some of the moves and scenes like that. So it really is, we'll be straight through. We'll see cuts. We'll be like, oh, like, could we bump this up, cut this out, change dialogue here, do a different take here, all the way up until like picture lock, guys, done, we're ready for delivery. And even at that point, I'll have to deliver all the images, behind the scenes, videos, movie poster images, everything to the studio, whoever winds up buying it from us. So I'll have to deliver all that. They'll be like, hey, do you have any pictures like this? I'll send it to that. So yeah, it's straight through to the end when we have to deliver.
And in your advice, what is one step a young filmmaker can make to take their productions to the next level?
You know, I felt like one of the biggest steps for me was leading by example. One thing that I can't really stand is people who just talk, never walk the walk. They're just, oh, I got this, I'm gonna do this. Oh, you know what, like I'm gonna get to this, and you know, like you should come on board for this, and we should do this, and I'll do this. It's just a lot of that, wheeling and dealing, but never actually doing. And so one thing that I learned at a very early age, especially even going back to the music stuff, I loved heavy music so much. It's like it is in me, and I just wanted to be part of it. So I was like, you know, I'm going to start my own band. And then when I had stuff in my head of like photography stuff, so I'm like, oh, I should try this. Let me do it. And when it came to the film stuff, I was like, oh, I love this idea. I want to do it. I shot a short film. So these are things that like when you do it and you show people and you lead by example of things that you don't have to feel intimidated by because you're wondering, oh, can I get this person on board? Can I do it like this? Just do it. It's if you're able to show an actual product with minimal connections, minimal technique, but you were able to tell some story that was like, whoa, like you did this on your iPhone with like a lamp and this person, like this is awesome. How, like this is really good. You're gonna get more respect out of higher ups because the higher ups already know how to do all the big bells and whistles. What they always are in need of is really fresh content, really fresh filmmakers who are thinking of new innovative things. So the people who are sort of aspiring to be that, don't look at it as you have to create something that is so up to par with what all the big guys are doing. In my opinion, whatever everyone else is doing, do something opposite, because I'm telling you, if you do something different, it will stand out significantly more.
Well, you dropped the mic there. That's a great way to end this conversation, kind of put a pin in it. Tell us about what you can about any upcoming new productions, what people can expect next from you, Jesse, and where people can find you and stay in contact with you.
Cool. So the upcoming projects, I promise you, I really, really would love nothing more than to say what's coming up. We have a movie coming out in November, Chick Fight, with Alec, with Alec Baldwin, Malin Ackerman, Bella Thorne. That one's going to be a big one for us. We have another horror movie coming out. I'm not sure when, probably sometime early next year, called Separation, with a big horror director, William Brent Bell, who did Devil Inside, The Boy 2. So we have a big one of that coming out. And then we have Red 48, of course, coming out probably hopefully by next year. But in production, we have maybe 2 to 3 coming up this year. Again, one of them will be my feature one. Another one is, yeah, they're just awesome. Like I hope I can share that news. But if you want to know more, as soon as press comes out about it, I post it on my Instagram. So it's just Jesse Korman on Instagram, my name. And Yale Productions, our website, shows all the movies that we have if you want to see any of the movies that we've produced and worked on. But yeah, anything that's sort of like breaking news is I usually immediately will post on my Instagram. And yeah, I'm always looking for fresh, new content, or not even content, just people who are doing something incredibly creative that could be a tool to helping tell one of our stories. So keep it fresh, and if you have something to show, like, send it over.
Boom. Couldn't have said it better myself. Jesse, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to speak with us.
Absolutely.
I think it was, at least for me, it was very inspiring, and I'm really looking forward and excited to see your first feature film coming out. So
Thank you so much. Thank you.
thanks for taking the time, and for all the viewers out there, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you at the next one. Take care.